Alright. I just started the GoPro. Okay. So I'm Gavin Palmer. I'm speaking with my brother Dalton Palmer. And we're just exploring a few initial ideas. And Dalton is hanging out with his roommate who has a phone that has that. Okay. We were gonna. What's that?
That's not what it sounded like.
Yeah, you do it. Great.
Off tune.
Exactly. So I guess we're going to start by just discussing the human condition. And the first thing I wanted to say about the human condition is that the human condition is always changing, or it has the capability to change, and that is because the human is shaped entirely by experience, and experience within an environment. So that's just a starting point for my analysis of human condition.
I agree with what you said. And since we are all a result of the human condition, then we're constantly being affected by things around us. And, the education system isn't teaching us the importance of understanding how things affect us and why they affect us. And we're teaching people ways in which to process information and store it so that it can be used, instead of understanding how it makes us feel and drives our own purpose. So because of the word human condition, instead it's saying it is a result of things, we're keeping people from changing and affecting themselves. We're letting people become a product of the environment instead of encouraging them to understand how the environment can affect them if they let it. Because, everyone is capable of processing information in different ways, and we need to help them discover the many ways that everyone processes all the information around them. And it's through seeing the cultural influences of the human condition that we understand how people are a result of everything around them. And these ideas against control, against the ability to freely express yourself, how those ideas cause what we label the human condition. So the human condition is trying to capture what is a result of condition. The word condition is the result of a situation. The situation that humans are in is that we are a result of the condition. And, we have to train our minds and train our spirits, our energy within our emotions, and our own ability to process it within our mind to change a human condition for something that's better, so that it doesn't involve things that the human condition becomes war and poverty and famine in the human and race.
Yeah, you don't have to. I'm not interrupting you right now. That just means wrap it up. Keep going.
Yeah. No, the concept of ideas and trying to define the idea human condition begins to include things that are a result of a poor human condition, and we need a healthy human condition to constantly inspire us to change it. And people just accept that we're in this situation like we can't affect it, and we have to actively seek ways and talk about ways to affect the human condition. Because if we are a result of the condition in which we're in, then our condition needs to be one that produces progress and encourages understanding how we can better ourselves and our environment through the condition. Yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah, I guess there's an aspect of the human condition where it is a response and it's changing. But then, are there aspects of the human condition that are eternal, like unchanging? They're universal, and even if they're not universal, are they just significant enough that they're going to be so influential going into the future that we can go ahead and just label them as a universal human condition that won't change no matter the changes in the environment. And the reason I bring that up is because there are belief systems where people believe that there is a human condition that is eternal. So, for instance, the Christian religion says that we are sinners, right off the bat. And what I've often tried to explain to people is that I interpret sin as being simply the result of ignorance, and that is and that ignorance is a universal human condition which every human being experiences in life. And so that would just be, what I claim to be a universal human condition, and something we have to recognize.
I can see that. I agree with what you're saying. It's important the words you use, because the word universal and eternal try to describe something, the human condition, in a state in which it's so simple that it's unchangeable. And universal, the concept of something that's vast in infinity and that we haven't wrapped our minds around, it means that it needs to be simplified. And what I'm suggesting is that maybe it is as simple as that the human condition is emotional expression. And we're always a result of our emotional expression.
So perhaps emotions are tied in with the fact that we were born into this world ignorant and helpless.
Yes, because we have all these feelings that we have to discover and understand in order to develop an awareness of our environment and our awareness of our position and individual capability. And what's interesting I find about emotion is that it's everywhere. It's in all living creatures. Plants, pollinate and recreate, and we give emotional associations to recreation. And recreation is an action that has an emotional association. And animals get sad or angry and defend for food and their needs to stay alive. So emotion has driven everything. You can look at the earth and the stars, like the creation of everything. So it is emotional. It's a reaction against forces.
So let's you want to talk about a specific one, perhaps lust being something, basically a reproductive tendency, that is instinctual. It's programmed within our biology to a degree, and it is something that's part of our perhaps universal human condition that we have to recognize whenever we want to explore ways to minimize violence associated with rape and things of that nature.
Yes, lust is real and it's very powerful. It's very useful because it makes us want to attain things we have yet to attain. And, we put concepts of right and wrong on the emotion lust, and then it's just inherently going to be bad or good or appropriate or inappropriate. And what happens is people attach other emotions to the one lust. So whenever they actually feel lust and they understand that they want something, then they think that it means that they can take lust. And, for people who think that they can rape someone, they take lust in the fact that they're having sex with a young girl. And in fact, they want to have sex with youth, and they want to have sex with ideas of virginity and cleanliness, and maybe they didn't have a chance to explore their sexuality when they were in their youth, so that they couldn't obtain that certain understanding. So because of the shapes of the environment of how we view lust. So it's the view of lust that shapes.
So a proper education system would embrace the fact that a human being has lust, whether it is, and basically it might be as simple as we could probably describe it as some type of endorphin release mechanism or something associated with that. But an education system should attempt to educate a human being about these experiences, these universal experiences, and give the human being the tools necessary to recognize when lust occurs and to understand it and transform it into a behavior that allows the human being to be satisfied while avoiding causing harm to other people.
Yes, and there are ways to educate people on it. There's been some studies that are done on the body. They map the chemical responses within the body to feelings of lust, and like, you know, you give someone a bunch of money, or they accomplish something, or sexual pleasure, and you know, labeling emotions causes them to be separated from each other. But you know, it's just a powerful emotion that someone's feeling, and like it's rewarding, and it offers them a bit of understanding about something. So like, you know, lust is only different from greed and jealousy and hate by the separations that we create in labeling it. So like the emotion lust is something that is influential and important for everyone to understand what they want to do. And like the emotion lust is in everything from lusting for, you know, a woman because of sexual energy. We want to reproduce and we want to pass on traits.
And then to compare
lusting
that
for
jealousy
for an object, like if you want something. People have been taught not to covet, and like wanting something is bad. Wanting something you do not have is bad. But the thing is if you want something, then you need to try to understand why you want it. And you know, maybe that's something for you to important. Like maybe you want this object or this item or this idea because it, you know, it is relevant. So then they lust after it. And you know, that why do people need to be condemned or you know, put down because they want something if there are other people who are on their own path to understanding want something similar? And you know, go ahead.
Okay, so people. So in general, there's these we try to categorize emotions like jealous, like lust or sexual lust versus a material lust for ownership of some kind, like a jealousy or a greed or a coveting, or even it could take shape in the form of an addiction to more of something that you feel that you need to attain, you need to have. So we're talking about these ideas, and we're talking about the a process of educating a human mind into being aware of these experiences and being able to deal with these experiences in a way that brings about you know, a satisfaction for the individual, as well as an avoidance of causing harm to other individuals. So what I think is that just the fact of actually recognizing the emotion for what it is, the recognizing the energy for what it is, and understanding that emotion in itself begins to bring about the satisfaction or a return to a balanced emotional state. And that if the human mind isn't if the human mind is unable to recognize the emotion and understand it, then that leads toward extreme forms of the emotion in which people the individuals continue to suffer to a degree, and that they are more likely to cause harm to other people.
Yes, it all revolves in education. Something that's really important is like the way that education is structured is that children are bracketed into groups based on age or based on location or based on whatever step they are. Like sometimes people are held back for a reason because they don't understand something. And the thing is that we're all capable of understanding our own purpose, and education is a tool to teach individuals how they understand and interpret this information. And whenever we group people into a bracket and say you have to move at this rate, or you have to move with this other path, or else you're bad and you're not doing things well, then we condemn misunderstanding. And then people just flow with the cultural environment to try to replicate everything around them, and they don't understand the processes that help them understand how things make them feel and why things that we create are relevant as contributing towards something better. And, just the separation of people based on, age or wisdom or, their understanding or their abilities or, disabilities keeps people from understanding how everything works as a whole. And,
don't you think that there is a benefit to allowing people who are walking along, who are taking a similar step in their path, upon the path in life? Yeah, so that's a better way to say it. Don't you think there is a benefit to allowing people who are taking similar steps along their path in life to be able to learn together and to help teach each other?
Yes, definitely. So like they need to be in school together, and using age is as a semblance of something is useful in order to serve the needs of the individual. But right now we're using it to serve the needs of everything as a whole, and people get left out and left behind from their own understanding of certain ideas.
Yeah,
so like it's just a tool to provide a service, and we're instead making it become the mandated service and like a requirement.
I understand what you're saying. I would also say that so we're using age as a metric when in fact we really should be the emotional state and the ability for a human mind to understand the emotions and deal with the emotions they experience might not have anything to do with their age group. There can be someone who is 30 years old and someone who is 10 years old who are going through similar struggles and being able to recognize and understand the emotional state that they are going through.
That's exactly right. And everything is a tool to help people find other people with similar learning methods and similar, styles of sharing information. We can find people to network and associate with. And age groups is helpful in figuring out, how the responsibility someone has been in and the ways they've learned to deal with information. But, the ways that we can separate people are used to, in fact, separate people. Like the ways we create separation in order to assist divides people. And they need to understand how these words are influential on emotion, because through separation, there's always going to be influence. But that's why we need to allow people to just always seek to understand themselves better and not create separation. So you can be in a group based on your personal wisdom, your personal feelings, desires, based on how old you are.
And you can have
different have to control you.
And you can have
control
different
yourself.
You can have different networks.
Different networks that allow people to try different things. So, and try them safely, because someone who's educated and understands these concepts because they're passionate about it desires to teach the next generation something that's beneficial.
It makes me think of...
They don't judge people based on age or based on their intellectual capability, because everyone can ask a question that makes anyone think something more clearly and helps reveal truth and encourages, competition.
It makes me think of the... a comparison to physical capability in athletics. In boxing, you have groups based on weight, or in a sports, you might have groups based on skill level. And the thing is, there's no reason. Age might be okay for grouping people. For grouping 90% of the people. And that's just a number. But the thing is. You are going to need to have different groups. So just because you're as good as this peer who is a similar age at doing basketball or some physical activity, lifting weight, doesn't mean that you're going to be along the same development. You're not going to be at the same development level when it comes to your emotional awareness, which is something that I think we would agree that every human being should learn. And then there's going to be different interests. Each individual is going to have different interests, and it would be nice if human minds can, if we can facilitate in our education system, if we can facilitate a human mind to seek those things which they are interested in, and to self-organize with other people who are interested in similar things. I also had the thought that the emotions, the emotional state is a feedback mechanism. So I think I got the idea from you that the human mind experience in our current education system can actually have this emotional feedback of frustration, and it's not a problem with the human being. It's a problem with the education system itself. And then I love biomimicry, and it would be nice if the education system. I believe that many of our systems are missing a feedback mechanism, because that's what the emotional state is. It's a feedback mechanism from some source that has an intelligence that that while we're here on Earth we can learn from and understand. But there's no feedback mechanism in the public education system for someone who is frustrated. And if there is, it's there, but it can be made better for sure.
Well, what I've started identifying is you said it's a feedback mechanism, which is a good, feedback is the important word there. But it's through the emotional interpretation of everything that we develop the feedback. Concept like bullying. Bullying exists because picking and teasing and finding comedy and ways to join people and meet new people are ways that we interact as human beings. And you say that all forms of bullying is bad. And I'm not saying that bullying is bad, but identifying separations is how we appreciate separation. Later you'll see, that guy who had his shorts up, whatever, he was good at doing this, or he did this differently, and then you can appreciate them. It's just a tool. And then people say all bullying is bad and good, and then people start bullying and taking stuff.
Well, and then the truth is bad. And the truth is, people don't even try to understand why someone is bullying in the first place.
Right. And it's always because they're upset emotionally, and we have to talk about it. It's like, right. What do they want to do? Maybe they want to shoot basketball, or maybe they want to be in wood shop, or maybe they just want to be at home and read or do nothing.
And I know I was a bully, and I know the reasons why I was a bully. One of the reasons I was a bully was because I found it as an outlet to build connections and relationships with other people. So if I could pick on that person with my wit and my intelligence, and compare, and point out their abnormalities in comparison to the majority of the people, and do it in such a way to get other people to laugh, and then it was an outlet for me to have acceptance among my peers. So that's just, I just wanted to add that that's one reason why bullying will exist. I've slowly moved away from that bullying energy as I found new outlets to develop relationships with people that are more constructive and cause less harm. So, it's beautiful actually. That emotion that pushed me to bully is the same emotion that leads me to do what we're doing right now, which I think is very constructive, and it causes very little harm. So, and I enjoy it. There's a joy and a peace that comes about. There's a satisfaction because I've recognized and addressed that emotional motivation to do something, and I found an outlet to find the gratification and to satisfy that emotional push, that emotional pull.
And that's the rewards of understanding these emotions. Bullying is completely natural, but what happens is, as humans, we say this is good or bad because this hurt someone, and we say that emotions are good and bad, and then people become afraid to express their emotion and say why it upsets them, or say what it makes them feel and what it makes them think, because bullying is always a tool if you let it be. But the problems of bullying, the real problems of bullying, is that it discriminates and it makes people feel bad, and then the concepts of what feels good and bad actually further influences society and has encouraged you to not bully anymore because you recognize that it makes people feel bad.
Let me actually explain.
That's an acknowledgement of emotion, and it's just a response. Everything responds to emotion to teach us a lesson, and we have to embrace the lesson. And people are told they can't embrace it, and then it prohibits learning.
I think that another universal human condition is our tendency to have empathy to a degree. And so I don't know if it was a dream or if it was real, but I remember a young girl in second grade that I picked on, and I remember that on this one occasion I turned around for the laughter, and no one was there. And whenever I looked back at the young girl, she was crying, and she asked me, she said, "Why are you doing this to me?" And like I said, I don't know if this was a dream or if it was real, but I know that I experienced it, and it shaped me. The empathy that is part of my human condition, which I believe is part of all humans' condition, and I believe it is universal and eternal. That empathy led me to begin seeking a new outlet. That empathy led me to actually share in the suffering that I had created. It allowed me to actually begin relating to the other human being. There was a connection and there was communication of emotions, and it felt bad. I felt the suffering that she felt, and I felt the suffering that I had caused. And what's beautiful about that is, technology, and just in the last few decades, we're in the birth of a revolution using technology and our ability to connect and communicate with other people. We're doing it right now. As every human being gets an IP address and is able to communicate with other human beings and share their emotional energy, I believe that is just going to increase the awareness of the suffering that we cause, where the truth is that we cause a lot of suffering we're unaware of. So, I wasn't aware of that young girl's suffering until I had that experience. And I love the idea that technology can allow us to begin gaining an awareness of the suffering that we cause.
Yeah, empathy definitely exists, and it's something that not everyone is aware that they have the ability to tune into. And every animal has empathy. Like, we've domesticated animals that show empathy because they see our emotions and they give us feedback and they help us better understand and control our own emotion. Empathy is within each individual, but people say, "Oh, I don't have empathy," or people label someone else, "Oh, he is incapable of empathy." Right. But it's within us all because we all have emotion. We're all subject of our emotion, and we have to connect. Empathy describes the connection between all emotion.
But there's also an ability for us to connect, which is limited by space and time, and we are more able to overcome those barriers, which are space and time, as we use technology. So, for instance, Aunt Deborah, she went through an experience of a lot of suffering, and if I had lived in the same house with her, then that suffering would have very naturally been experienced by myself as well. It would have been a shared experience. But because there's so much distance between us, and because I am just now becoming a better communicator, because I am beginning to use technology better to communicate, I can recognize that, it's not that I didn't have empathy for my aunt. The truth is that there is a relationship with time and distance to where we can have an empathetic relationship with another human being, and the technology allows us to overcome those barriers. And you can take those truths that I'm talking about and begin to understand how we can better connect with people in Africa or on the other side of the planet as well. And right now, if this recording is made available hundreds of years from now, decades from now, long after both of us are dead, there's people who might begin to share in that empathetic experience. If I were to go into detail about the suffering that is experienced, the suffering that was experienced by that little girl, I can go into detail on it, and the suffering that was experienced by my aunt, and that empathy can be communicated. It can be received by a mind across vast amounts of space and time using technology, and that is beautiful. It's miraculous. It's good. It's powerful.
What I'm saying is it definitely is powerful, and using technology as a tool teaches us that the tool is just serving as a function to cause the closeness. And everyone we've ever met, we could tell that they were more or less empathetic than someone else, or they were more in control of their emotion than other people. And the variation between the difference in our ability to empathize isn't limited by what we conceive as physical distance or space and time. It's about the closeness that we allow ourselves to feel with everyone's emotion. So you can completely empathize with someone and be unlimited with space and time. It's a variable, and we're in control of the variable for empathetic action and expressing our own emotion. But everyone needs help in different ways, and not everyone sees the help that people need, and not everyone is an answer as a source of help. But understanding that she was sad is how we learn that these things that make us sad keep us from living our own life. And I'm happy to see that
she had
able to develop.
I mean, it's the truth of the human condition is that every human being has a unique experience. That there was a saying I read. Every human being is going through a battle that you know nothing about, and that is because every human being is having a unique experience. So it's nice to recognize that truth. That I really, I have to really be paying attention to my attention, in order to have empathy, to share, to have empathy and share the emotional state that someone else is experiencing. And so, I'm only the result of my environment. And we're all born into this world with ignorance. So, there's learning steps. And, I'm learning as much as I can. We do need to try to wrap up this video clip. We're over 30 minutes. So, what would you like to say in conclusion with regard to the human condition and education well, let me just go ahead. I'll do a summary of what I think we discussed. As we discussed the human condition, we discussed education, we discussed the human condition being somehow describable in two different aspects. As one aspect of our human condition is that it is totally shaped by environment. There's a lot of our conditioning that is shaped by environment at every moment. And then there's another aspect of our human condition which is more universal, which is that is shared for every human being, and will probably be shared for every human being for all time, unless some future technology that will come about that just will change everything. But we can't see into the future. So that would be the summary, of what was discussed, if my memory serves me correctly. And then the highlights would be, for the education system, is to recognize the human condition itself, begin understanding it, and especially begin to understand the emotional state. That education system should focus on teaching human beings to recognize their emotional state and understand their emotional state, and perhaps, and we didn't get into it, perhaps there is some way that we can actually mimic the emotional state as a feedback mechanism to improve the technologies which allow the education system to work better for the individual who is allowed to provide feedback to the information, to provide this metadata into the system to allow for adaptation based on measurable amounts of information using technology. So I'll let you have the last words. You still there?
Yeah, I am. Thanks for letting me share. I like your step analogy of the process of emotional understanding of the human condition. That, it's constantly going to be steps until we realize that, creating the steps is what keeps us from experiencing everything as a whole. And, the human condition is defined by our own actions and our own expectations of the world. And we have to control ourselves in order to help control the human condition. That's all.
So the education system is helping the individual to gain self-control.
Self-control. And, not everyone understands the word self-control. Some people think that self-control they're incapable of because they are constantly influenced by their environment. So we're all influenced by our environment until we understand what we need to understand to quit being influences of negativity and start promoting positive usage of understanding.
That reminds me of go ahead.
If you got to wrap it up, we should wrap it up.
For this video. We can continue the discussion afterward, but it just reminds me of Gavin Mate. I mentioned that, I throw that name out because I heard him mention that perhaps most of the social problems we have are just the result, the effect of problems in the systems. It's basically an indicator that things need to change within the system. So for instance, if an education system improves, then you're going to have less people in prison. You're going to have less people committing violence. You're going to have less suffering over time if you were to actually measure suffering and happiness. It just made me think of Gabor Mate.
And it's measurable in any and all system, even the system of expressing how things are organized, like, control systems. Every system is influential on the system because we created a way in which we're going to organize structures, and we did it as tools to understand things. But the things that we've understand have shaped us and kept us from understanding that we're only limited by our only conceptions of structures. And free thinking and challenge your definitions of what words mean, and don't limit people, like by saying the human condition is you have to be this human condition. So people ultimately are in control of themselves, and emotional expression is the human condition. And then there's emotional expression of control and not being in control.
There's I don't think we
understand in order to control our own emotions. You can only control yourself, and no one else has the right to control you. So inform yourself and understand your purpose so that you aren't controlled by other people's desires and wishes. No one has the ability to do that to you.
There's a few things. I haven't stopped recording. I figure we can just go ahead and extend it. But there's a few things you're saying there that makes me have thoughts. That there's there's the girl who was raised by a pack of wolves, in the jungle, and so whenever you say that you have control to a degree, don't forget we are the product of our environment. So we have some responsibility in shaping the environment so that human minds born into this world have the privilege of benefiting from the collective consciousness that is made available through language and through the sum total of our communication storage and our communication capabilities as a whole. I have one more thought. Go ahead. What else were you talking after you said that we had? What were you talking about after you said that we have self-control? Because what I just said was just a response that
I was saying that no one has the ability, like once people accept that they have the ability for self-control, then they realize that self-control means that other people also have self-control. And we learn respect out of our own ability to control ourselves. And, other people, we need to recognize that all the influences that shaped us were controlling us until we decided to change the way it resulted within ourselves. And we have to encourage people through word usage. Like, I really enjoy our discussion here on the human condition, but by mislabeling the human condition as being a result of something, then we're telling people who don't know yet that they are a result of something. And the thing is we need to encourage people to understand how they're being affected by the world. And, it keeps us from desiring the wrong goals. Like, we need to have goals that preserve our life and our ability to spread life. We're unlimited only to our own limitation. Like, we could go to stars, we could go under the ground, we could create a new world if we develop ways of understanding the formation of the earth. We're completely unlimited, but whenever we're fighting over disagreements between our own abilities to decide for ourselves, we're not ever fully able to explore individuality. And, the educators need to be people who have the same goals of, purpose and, similar concepts connect people to these ideas like God. All religions speaks of God who praises for, understanding, but then through manipulation of information, these concepts of things that connect everyone have been misrepresented so that it divides us and separates us. But the agnostic and atheists are just as important as the believers in faith, because they teach us to challenge God at all points and realize that by challenging God, we realize that we are the creators of everything, but God unites us, and it is the drive that is all of human emotion. And I've called it emotion God. And the Romans and Greeks called gods, and they labeled them with emotion, said that they just taught us and made us do these things, and we can be gods of our emotion. But God is just a concept to let us understand what a God is. It's someone who is in control, that is a creator and a destroyer of all things, and we can provide life or death. And it's sad that we're continuing to do the negative when God is a creator too. He loves, and different faiths say different things, but there's always meaning and emotion and metaphor and the intelligence of scientific understanding. And
I know there's
history.
There's some things you're saying that I know people are gonna disagree with if they don't try to look at the underlying meaning, because you do use words like just saying that God is a he or
she, yeah.
I mean, or it, or
it doesn't matter,
or everything.
We're
I've
genderless.
But then there's gender identity. That's kind of weird.
Gender is for reproduction, so that more life can exist. It's an identifying set of characteristics. It doesn't imply anything unless we give it to it.
Well, I'm just pointing out, to any of the audience that wants to say that, my brother, is using these words. I just wanted to point out, try to understand the underlying message. The underlying message, for instance, self-control, or our ability to take control. That I think that there's some, our ability to do that is relative. I'm not sure that that's a universal truth. It's a relative truth, and it's definitely relative to our current age. That
it is relative.
So in our current, as a thought experiment, you could take 1,000 babies and eliminate the rest of the entire, not babies, but young children, that have not learned any language and barely learned how to walk, and allow and get rid of all of man and man's creation, and put them in the wild with monkeys and wolves, and they get raised by monkeys and wolves, and the statement that they have control, it's no longer as valid, because it's definitely relative. So I just wanted to point out there's some things that we talk about, and the underlying message, it might not be a universal truth, but there might be a relative truth.
Yes, I see what you're saying too. The problem lies that definitions of words can have multiple meanings, and whenever people are educated, that the true emotional expression. You mean
programmed, right? You mean programmed?
Yeah, programmed is a word that describes a state of being. We have conditions that we set in order to cause a certain reaction. Program works, but it's things that we can choose to believe. Programming, belief, things that are important to us. These are all words that describe programming. And, the things that everyone needs to be able to decide is what type of programming they're going to be suited for in order to provide. And, there's never any positive or negative intention meant on the words that I say, because I'm just trying to state reality. The creation of words was to express ideas and emotions to help everyone. Like, that is why we created words as humans, is to express ourselves.
I'm just, I have to point it out, because anytime there are teachers in our past that say things that are true at that point in time, but they are relatively true. So they're, I'm a little bit of a relativist, as far as a moral relativist, but there are things, and I think you could look toward Buddhism that are eternally true. So you definitely it'd be nice to distinguish between, as we tried to do with the human condition, when we began discussing it. It's nice to differentiate a little bit between those things that are going to be true, that have been true for all of our written history, our known history, versus things that, it's true now, it may not have been true previously.
Well, what I would encourage people to do is, like, if what I've said upset them, is please tell me how it's made you feel, and what you were thinking while you were feeling the things I was trying to express to you. And then I can understand what it meant to you. And by understanding what things mean to you, then we can make sure that we both understand each other. And I never meant to limit anyone by my opinions. I want to encourage them to discover their own opinions. And through understanding why we really don't like something, it's, that's our body giving us a cue that we want to learn, or we don't know something, or that something isn't for us. It's just right. Everything is a cue, and we need to be willing to understand it. Whenever people disagree, they think that they need to speak back, or they need to get upset in some way, or have certain emotional reactions that, they've learned. And that's fine, because we learn what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate. And I always want to be appropriate, so that I never hurt anyone's feelings, because everything that I try to do is out of truth and love. So.
Well, the thing is that the beauty of the technology that's available now is that people can actually collaborate. You can be an interaction, and there can be an interaction that has never been seen before. So, like, this video goes on YouTube, people can comment, and there can be an interaction, and there can be a collection of metadata that is used where questions are asked and answers are provided, to the point where the entirety of the picture can be best represented with the communication technologies that we have available. So that's a beautiful thing, which hasn't been available, perhaps in religion. So in religion there was no Q&A. With Jesus that was recorded, and I'm not saying Jesus is real. I'm just saying the fact is there was no Q&A. I didn't, there wasn't anybody in that time that was able to ask questions that I would have asked. And so it's the technology that is available is really awesome, and allows for a deeper understanding of the perspective of the content providers, because that's what I'm doing. I'm providing content. My brother Dalton is providing content, and anybody who participates can contribute to provide content, providing metadata about the data. There's people who we could take the audio of this presentation and combine it with different visual art. There can be all kinds of performances done, and this conversation might just spawn. Perhaps it could even spawn a movement of people who get around and have public discussions with the people that they love, and that would be a positive thing. So, to me, it's very beautiful. I see a lot of potential, and I believe, I have faith that, this thing's going to work out, So, at least that's how I'm going to live my life. So, do you have anything to add to that? As far as the ability for people to get involved, and the ability for us to use communication technologies to really enhance the message?
I feel like we require people from every different field to just ask any question, make a statement, because any opinion that's given causes a question to be asked. And questions are always good. You should always be able to wonder why I think what I do. And if it is something that makes sense and it is good for everyone, then people will come to a consensus that this is, wise. This is how we give respect to, our elders and people who have an education and use knowledge and wisdom in order to do good things. Is, by discussing and being able to say the wrong thing. Like, I may make a bad statement, and I want people to tell me that I misrepresented an idea, so that everyone is united in an idea that's inspiring, this positive emotion and positive energy that allows people to really be free to express themselves and express ideas and beliefs, because we're based,
we're going to make
democracy
mistakes.
Is beautiful.
We're going to make mistakes. We're amateurs.
We're free to do anything, and no one keeps us from our freedom. And, systems are set up to protect our freedom. And we're getting away from that. And,
yeah, I don't think
politics should not be off the table for discussion topics.
We're just not going to talk about politics in this one. We're just. Yeah, I mean, if we just went on forever, it would get increasingly boring. So
just break it up or something.
Exactly, but also, I have things to do, and anyways, I think this was a good discussion of human condition and education systems, and we even got into how this video itself becomes part of an education system. We began to hint on that. We began to discuss that idea. So, thank you for watching. Thank you, Dalton, for participating. I'm sure that we could discuss all the nuances and of everything that we just previously discussed for infinite amount of time. But I think it's pretty good right now. What do you think?
It's always good to constantly be shaping ourselves. So, know what we're constantly working to achieve a good goal and common goals. And whenever we give up on these common goals, then nothing ever happens that encourages progress. So keep working at it.
So
question everything.
We're amateurs, and we're experimenting, and we're making mistakes, and we're doing it publicly. Right?
Oh, that water's good. Yep.
We're amateurs. We're making mistakes, and we're doing it publicly. So I enjoyed it. Maybe some other people will enjoy it. All right, bro. That's it.